Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is Tuesday, February 14th, 2023, at a regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. City staff with us in attendance this evening. To my left, City Attorney Van Venerian, and to my right, Consultant City Planner Mr. Mario Ortega. Chairman Wolfson, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Could we stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Recording in progress.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. I have a roll call.
Novak, O'Rourke,
Here.
Osnick,
Here.
Palmer, Witt, Wolfson,
Here.
Robertson. Chairman Wolfson, we do have a quorum this evening.
Okay. Is there a request for agenda changes?
Yeah, this is Commissioner O'Rourke, and I'd like to add, please, on to new business, item number 2, an update to shed ordinances, specifically for lots having water frontage.
Okay. Do we need a roll call vote for this, or just?
Once we get down to new business, we can just discuss item number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Can I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes,
I'll make
January
it.
10th?
O'Rourke makes a motion.
Second?
Seconds it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, audience participation. Do we have anybody in the audience or online that would like to speak about anything?
If there are any audience members who would like to speak, you have 3 minutes to address the board. Please state your name and address. If you are attending electronically, please press *9 to activate the raise hand feature. No audience members this evening.
Okay. Any communications?
No, sir.
Do we need a public hearing on anything?
No public hearing
Nope.
tonight.
Okay. Unfinished business. We have PC case 299-1186 East Maple site plan. Applicant Maple Plaza Shopping. Mr. Ortega, could you give us an update on this?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. You have my review letter in front of you, or the second site plan. Just to refresh the public's memory, this site is located on East-West Maple, just east of Gamma Road. This is the former vacant Coney Island restaurant building that is proposing to be a Savvy Sliders drive-through restaurant. This is their second review, so to address the issues just quickly in my letter that are relevant to the revisions, looking at lot configuration, the proposed site plan still shows a majority of the necessary drive-through site improvements, such as the required parking located on a tax parcel separate from the parcel upon which the building is located. So the applicant has provided a draft easement agreement between these two separate parcels to address the use of these improvements, issues such as vehicle access and circulation, and parking requirement issues. So when finalized, we do believe this document will address all access and functional use issues for the proposed restaurant. And just as a note, this wouldn't also prohibit the applicant from a time in the future if they wanted to do a lot split that would allow them to have all the improvements on a separate lot, on the lot for the restaurant, if they chose. But as a property owner, I do believe that this is one means of addressing this issue. One issue with this existing draft, though, is that we recommend it to be revised to include the legal description for both parcels in the exhibits A and B. So we would recommend any site plan approval be contingent upon the applicant submitting a copy of the signed easement agreement that has been recorded with Oakland County Register of Deeds to address this lot configuration issue. Moving down to building renovations, when it comes to the facade, the applicant states that the submitted elevations that are within your packet are design intent renderings. They're not stamped or sealed by an architect. They are supposed to represent the proposed design. However, there's some inconsistencies between these design intent elevations in the existing structure. For example, those elevations show a split-face masonry block along the foundation of the building with a limestone sill, while the existing building actually has a standard modular brick that goes from the ground all the way to the roof line, including at the foundation, and it's just proposed to be painted. So we would recommend that site plan approval should be contingent upon the applicant submitting building plans for construction that include all the elements shown on the design intent plans, subject to any revisions being requested by the Planning Commission. So if you feel there's any need to address some of the proposed materials or colors or anything related to the facade during the course of the evening, those could be submitted with the revised construction drawings. And then also, we would just reiterate that any deviation from these construction plans that are approved tonight, from their approved materials or colors or configuration, we would advise the applicant that any deviation from these should require submittal of a revised site plan to the Planning Commission for your review and consideration, rather than attempting to just have these revisions done administratively. One other thing we note is that the photorealistic renderings that are supplied, they don't include any elements proposed for this building. There's no peaked roofs, there's no columns, there's no higher level quality materials. They're proposing using a Nietzsche brand, which is a composite style board, which is modern and it can be very attractive, but it's not shown in the renderings. So I just wanted to make you aware of that as well. Those photo renderings aren't represented at all, except possibly the color configuration. Looking at site circulation, the applicant has submitted a truck maneuvering plan, and it does appear that the trash hauler vehicles would be adequately access the site. However, the emergency vehicle circulation plan, it appears to extend slightly into an existing building footprint. So we would actually defer to the city engineer and the fire marshal to determine adequate access and any necessary changes, for example, to like proposed turning radii or other type of engineering-related modifications that would allow for emergency vehicles, and most specifically anything that any fire equipment that the city has to access the site effectively. For example, one option might be to have the emergency vehicles enter the site on the eastern drive and then access the building and wherever they need to, and then only require a slight rear movement, and then head southbound on the property and go around the rear of the main building, because that is where most tractor trailers actually go for their drop-offs. So there's options that I think where the site could still function for that emergency vehicle. And one other issue to point out with regards to circulation is that the applicant has revised the site plan to remove the two-way access point. There was a point we discussed thoroughly at the last meeting. And there will now be a raised curb along that western edge of the site, and so no vehicles from the boulevard and entrance will enter directly there and cause excessive traffic conflicts. So we do believe this revised configuration on the site plan will minimize those conflicts and result in a much safer and defined access to the drive-through. Just a couple other things quickly. The applicant has shown a loading zone, but it does appear to be somewhat difficult for a tractor trailer to park in the loading zone in front of the dumpster enclosure. So we just recommend the applicant revise the site plan to show a functional loading zone, addressing things such as making sure they have convenient access to the building. And we do believe there's some alternatives that could be done. For example, on the south side of the drive-through lane, it seems like they could put a hash area there that would allow for deliveries to be made easily and also not significantly impact any kind of vehicle circulation in the parking lot. Another condition of approval we would recommend is when it comes to landscaping, we've talked about the fact that there's an existing evergreen screen that will function effectively at the moment for screening headlights from the drive-through. However, a condition of approval should be, should that screen ever get removed, because it is located in an Oakland County right-of-way, the applicant will re-establish either a brick screening wall or the existing shrub screening on their private property. And then finally, with regards to lighting, the ordinance requires that lighting shall be shielded so that it does not cause glare or interfere with the vision of motorists. The proposed light fixtures for the applicant has a transparent acrylic face, which will cause glare, in our opinion, to motorists along West Maple. So the applicant, we recommend modify that light fixture to create an opaque face, so therefore light does not directly project out, or select a different fixture entirely, because downward projected fixtures are very attractive and they would enhance the building and get that artistic, architecturally interesting look that they're looking for with that particular light fixture. So in the end, we do believe this is, the project has addressed the majority of the issues, and this project will result in the redevelopment of a vacant building. And so if the Planning Commission does determine that these issues can be addressed administratively, we recommend any approval be contingent upon those issues I addressed with regards to the signed easement, the building plans, revised site plans, also the applicant obtaining their necessary variances, then any other issues outlined by the city engineer, the fire marshal, or other city departments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there the applicant of Maple Plaza here, or a representative?
Yep, I believe Mr. Heffernan with Stonefield is attending through Zoom, so he's online with us.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. This is Kevin Heffernan of Stonefield Engineering. Apologies, as I'm currently traveling out of state. But as you may remember, I presented this project last on January 10th, where we thoroughly discussed the project, specifically the driveway and access configuration on the west side, and the need to address the shared access, shared parking, and proposed improvements that are located on the overall shopping plazas parcel. So as Mr. Ortega has stated, we have since resubmitted a revised plan set addressing many of the city's concerns as possible. We closed the Western Drive aisle to alleviate the traffic concerns over at the entrance to the stacking lane. We provided a designated loading area by the trash enclosure, and we did put together the detailed vehicle analysis confirming the adequate access. One note on the access, Mr. Ortega did mention there is a little bit, I guess it's hard to tell where the vehicle turn would more or less stay within the drive aisle. It's a little hard to tell because of the aerial imagery. The parallax of the photo shows the building overhanging past the sidewalk, but the vehicle turn, there should be absolutely no issues with either the loading, the trash vehicles, or any emergency vehicles making that maneuver around the existing landscape island and parking rows in front of the plaza, and then north towards the entrance of the stacking lane. So there should be no issues there. We can absolutely clean that up if need be. We've also provided drafts for the shared parking access and utilities for the shared easements, as well as the perpetual easements for any of the proposed drive-through equipment and signage that may extend past the restaurant parcel. We have no objections to the condition to install, evergreen hedging in the case that the county should remove the existing foliage up there, and the notes about the proposed lighting fixtures on the front facade of the building, as well as the east, that's a welcome recommendation, as we have no objections to changing that fixture to have a more opaque face and restricting the fixture's throw up and down along the building facade. So with that, we're here to answer any questions, and take part in any discussions.
Thank you. I also noticed one thing, that I didn't see any any diagrams about the pickup window. I see where you have the order sign and the menu sign, but nothing rendering where the pickup is going to be or how that is. Do any commissioners have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I reviewed the easement, the proposed easement that they have submitted. In what they're proposing to do is to take part of the parking lot that is located on a different parcel from the building itself and turn it into a drive-through. So they're going to be eliminating those current parking lot spaces and changing the use to a drive-through. I don't see anything in the easement agreement that dedicates the drive-through driveway, if you will, and the grass and the curbing and whatnot. There's nothing in the easement agreement that dedicates that area to the use as a drive-through. They have the right to drive vehicles over it, so if the owner of the shopping lot parcel 10 years down the road, for some reason, if they came under separate ownership, wanted to tear out the drive-through and restore it back to a parking lot, I don't see anything in the easement agreement that would prevent them from doing that. They would have the right to drive over it if they wanted to. They would have the right to park there if they wanted to. They would have the right to walk over it if they wanted to. Maybe they could put a menu board there if they wanted to. But there's nothing in there, in the easement, that dedicates this drive-through area as a use as a drive-through.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So is that just a risk then to Savvy Sliders in general, or what other risk would that be? I mean, I would assume that, Mr. Hefferman, you're aware of that already, or?
I guess you could look at it that way. Certainly would be a risk to the Savvy Slider people. They're under common ownership now, but if that changed for some reason down the road, I don't see anything in the easement agreement that dedicates the actual drive-through area for use as a drive-through.
Yeah, to Savvy Sliders, right? Yeah, okay. Wow.
That could cause problems later on, too. Anybody else?
The only other item I'm not clear on is I know very much what the building and the structure looks like today. Mr. Hefferman, I know what the structure looks like today. I understand the colors. I've actually seen your Savvy Sliders. I saw the one off exit 110 in Okemos, the ones around, so I kind of see what the goal is. But it does concern me a little bit that what the other stores look like isn't necessarily what this one is going to look like. We don't really have a rendering of the drawing or where the signs will be actually placed on the structure, and do the signs fit the ordinance for square footage, total allowable space for signs on buildings and such. Is there any way that you have a rendering of what the actual building will look like, even the roof change or anything along those lines? Because we're really kind of flying blind on that.
I understand the concern. Unfortunately, we asked Savvy Sliders to, and their architect team, to assist us here, but the way, I guess, their order of operations, they would like to, if possible, go through the planning process and receive their variances before engaging the architects and drawing the full elevations and floor plans. Now, we were able to get the elevations and floor plans of a similar building in the area, which is non-colored, but I believe was included within your guys' package. I believe the intent is to remove parts of the canopy, specifically that vestibule on the south side, but try and maintain the majority of the building. It's brick facade as well as the majority of the canopy, and then kind of give a facelift to this building with the classic Savvy Sliders colors and materials. yes, we'll be looking to paint the brick and maintain most of the existing materials, and trying to maintain a lot of the high transparency along the road frontage. And then we will be touching up. If you're familiar with the current building, the canopy is in rough shape. The intent is to keep it or keep the canopy and update the actual materials, the shingles, and provide most likely the black roofing that you'll see in the renderings, and just give it a modern update. And in terms of signage, we're looking at one along the road frontage. I know it's kind of blocked by a multitude of trees along the roadway, and then most likely one where the old, I don't know if you guys have old pictures of the existing building, but there was signage on the east side as well. So we would definitely be staying within the bounds of the city's zoning ordinance in terms of area, and working with the planning department to make sure that, there would be no variances there.
Okay, so looking at the several examples that you included in our packet, what we should expect to see is the brick staying as it exists today, but painted in the colors of the Savvy sliders that are currently out there.
Correct.
The canopy would then become black. That would substitute the black kind of wraparound on these buildings. We shouldn't expect to see any peaks or any changes in regards to the structures or the pitch of the roof. It's just going to be kind of cleaned up and reshingled, I guess, for the most part, of whatever the canopy's materials would be. And then you'd have just signs put on the canopy as it exists today, but with the newer materials. No
Correct.
changes in the look, okay. Because this is
Correct.
kind of
If
leading
there's
us
any
me to
damages.
believe that it's going to look like these, you
Right,
know?
right, it's not.
And it's not going to look like this at all.
Well, just a point of clarification. So with regards to the design intent drawings that are the elevations submitted with the packet, looking at those elevations, and looking at the notes from the review, their submittal letter, so they're completely removing the mansard roof structure to create a flat wall on all four sides. So it would completely be removed. It wouldn't project off like it does now, kind of like an old school McDonald's. It won't do that. It'll be all just lopped off. And then the intent is to put the Anisha vertical siding boards running from the foundation, the height of the foundation, so typically 3.5 to 4 feet above grade, from that point all the way up to a new flat roof line. That's what's shown in the design intent drawings, and so that's what, based on my recommendation, we would be looking for them to submit plans for to show. So, and, honestly, that mansard architectural feature, I have no problem with that going away because it is kind of a dated look.
Absolutely.
It doesn't function very well.
Yep.
As proposed, these design intent drawings will be provide a more clean, modern look. And so it would be better. I mean, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
it would be better. But just to point out that mansard roof projection would be going away on all sides.
Okay. Thanks.
And then they actually, according to this too, they're proposing, looks like standing seam or some type of awning over all the windows as well.
Okay.
What about the was Mr. Hartman? On the issues that Mr. Ortega came up with about revised sign easement agreement, type of construction, some of the issues, the lighting, the stall brick scene, well, got that, I think. There was the loading of vehicle circulation, I think, is approved. The fire marshal approved the fire line, I believe,
Yeah, you did.
and our fire marshal did. So do you have any problems with the other issues that we have or that we need?
Oh, we have no objections to any of the conditions outlined by Mr. Ortega. The one thing to mention, I know we discussed the easements. We absolutely can provide a new draft, including the parcel areas and the areas in question as described by the easement agreement. And then one thing to highlight, in section 5, letter, I believe, D, we are proposing a perpetual non-exclusive easement for the area and the shopping center parcel for any of the proposed drive-through equipment and signage serving the restaurant parcel, including the menu board, clearance bar, the order station, speakers, anything of that sort, maybe minor directional signage. We can amend that to include the driveway or the drive-through lanes and the pavement in its entirety as well. We can work with the city to finalize that language. When it comes to the lighting, as described by Mr. Ortega, that's a welcome change. We absolutely can provide a new fixture. It has an opaque front, doesn't have any throw towards the parking areas or the roadway, and projects the light up and down along the facade. And then in terms of the screening, I believe what was included in the review originally was a condition in the case that the county removes the existing foliage along the roadway, we would be held to install new evergreen screening. Absolutely no issue with providing that condition or, installing the shrubs. We just see it as redundant right now, as there'd be 2 layers of shrubs, but if the city would like that improvement, we have no issue adding that to the plans.
Okay.
I hope I answered all items.
Yeah.
Mr. Witt, can some of these things be handled administratively? Or-
Yes.
So if we were to approve this based on these requirements, there shouldn't be any trouble there, or do we need the actual drawings or the prints to be finalized?
I think we can do everything you need to do to vote tonight and then hand it over to administration. Ms. Jakeway's very responsibilities include the follow-up on those things.
Any other questions by commissioners?
City Attorney, is the perpetual non-exclusive, is that what you were basically referencing a few minutes ago? On page 5 here,
Yeah,
aligned.
it's limited to, being able to have a menu board and
Yeah.
a speaker. But it's no longer going to be a parking lot. It's going to be a drive-through. The area where the actual drive-through lanes and curbing, and they're going to have some landscaping in there. They're going to have install some lawn in there that isn't there currently. And there needs to be some language in the easement that says, that essentially says that that area is dedicated exclusively for use as a drive-through, as approved by the Planning Commission, for as long as, this Savvy Slider restaurant, is around and stays in business. They're going to probably want to include some language in there that would sunset that in the event that the restaurant closed up, sold, or whatever it may be. It'd be up to them to give us the draft language for that. But they need to have some, because the drive-through lanes in facilities are located on someone else's property other than the owner of the restaurant parcel. The owner of the restaurant parcel needs to have the property right to use this other lot, this other piece of property, exclusively as a drive-through.
That's where the perpetuity, the perpetual component of it to me is perpetual non-exclusive, right? That's the wording on it. So that means indefinitely non-exclusive.
It gives them some rights. It gives them rights to drive across that area of the parking lot and to have pedestrians walk across it and to put up some menu boards and some loudspeakers and whatnot. It just doesn't go far enough. It needs to go a little farther and speak more directly to the use of that area as a drive-through.
Can that also be handled administratively, or that has to be done a different
I
way?
think your motion here would require them change the language that this.
The same language
you know,
of them.
And then if that gets filed properly, I think we can handle everything.
I like the language where it, as long as the sliders are there, it goes with the sliders. But if the sliders go away, then the easement goes away.
Correct.
Again, I think we
sunset.
can handle, as long as the board wants to, can hand it to administration, we can handle that part. The legal part needs to be included in the motion, assuming they would do that. I would assume they would. And if we covered that, then I think we can handle Ms. Jakeway's.
Pursuant-
You could just add in there that the,
Pursuant to.
one of the contingencies be that the easement be subject to review and approval by the city attorney.
Okay.
That's the perfect answer to that. That means that she's going to get the motion down pat. We're going to get
Okay.
move to approve, and I would move to approve right now.
Yep.
And if I get a second, then she'll be able to draft that motion and get it to our listener, and we can move ahead administratively on everything, provided they're okay with that tonight. I think administratively, we want to see that move ahead. That's essentially an abandoned building. There's a lot of possibilities. That's the nature of municipal government. Things change in the future. But right now, putting it to work is.
So, so the applicant should, if possible, dedicate the additional 27 feet required for the road commission of Oakland County. This is because the intent is to ensure that any improvements within the future right-of-way are not substantial, that would require significant relocation in the future. It's best to try and address these now. We would note that there are currently other improvements in the future right-of-way, including the landscaping in front of the site, and the first bank of parking is actually located within that future right-of-way area, in addition to the proposed fence. So the one alternative would be to relocate those improvements now, and including and making sure that the fence location is is located out of the future right-of-way. The other alternative, I guess, could be, because we've just done this earlier tonight, would be to have any approval contingent upon the applicant removing all improvements in the future at such a time that the Oakland County Road Commission does take that, need that future road right-of-way. So I'm not sure if that's something that you want to entertain, but that's definitely an alternative with regards to that right-of-way situation. So then the majority of my review letter goes over looking at our ordinance fence requirements for any fences, this proposed fence. So the ordinance requires that fences in commercial zoning districts shall have a minimum height of 8 feet, a maximum height of 8 feet, and shall be permitted in the required side or rear yards. So the fence is proposed to be 6 feet in height and to be located in the front, side, and rear yard. So those fences, locations in the side and rear yard is in compliance with the ordinance. However, it's that front yard fence that is currently not in compliance with the ordinance. So the applicant must obtain a variance from the ZBA if they wish to place this fence in the required front yard, in the front yard of the site. And so any approval, site plan approval, should be contingent upon the applicant receiving the front yard location variance. Then the zoning ordinance has several other characteristics with regards to installation of a fence. As proposed, the fence is either in compliance with all the standards of our ordinance, or those standards do not apply. For example, some of the characteristics apply to a wall, and this isn't a wall, this is a fence. The only issue that we would note is that the depth of posts is a requirement to be made determined by a graphic showing how deep the post will be located. So to determine compliance with the ordinance standard, we recommend the site plan be revised to include a construction detail cross-section, basically showing the proposed depth is significantly below grade. So as mentioned, the side and rear yard fences are in compliance. It's that front yard fence that would require additional reviews and approval. So if the Planning Commission does determine the site plan approval is warranted tonight, we would recommend any approval be contingent upon addressing the right-of-way easement, the right-of-way, future right-of-way issue, applicant obtaining a variance from the permitted location requirements in order to place the fence in the front yard, and then the submittal of a revised site plan that includes that dimension cross-section detail for the depth of the posts. And with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant here or represented? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rochelle. I work with LaFontaine Automotive Group. And the main reason for the fence request site plan approval is that we have had many issues of theft. Unfortunately, within the past few months, I have Mr. John Rossi here with me. He is the general manager of the dealership across the street and as well as the used car. And we also I requested all police reports, and there's been about $50,000 worth of theft just since November, I believe. And the site plan that was submitted to you originally was just a very conceptual early site plan that just showed the proposed spaces. If we do receive site plan approval, one of the things that we will do is go back to the engineer and get the depth of the fence and any cross sections that you need. In regards to the front fence, we are aware that we have to go in front of the ZBA. We've already acknowledged that, and we are more than willing to go in front of them. My only request is that we leave where, sorry, how do I word this? Where we propose the front fence line to be until we are aware of the road commission's any future work that comes about, and at that time, we would be willing to remove and relocate our fence. If we were to do that now, like Mr. Ortega said, it does remove almost our entire front row of parking spaces that is in that storage lot already. And I believe that's really any issues that we had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any commissioners have any questions?
So, for city attorney, with the thought of allowing the fence to sit where it does today, and then the suggestion that if the county does require them to push it back, they do that, is that okay? Is that, does that work? Because it seems like once we approve this, then it stays.
Make that a condition of any site plan approval, that they relocate the fence as needed or required by the road commission to accommodate, the needed right-of-way, as Mr. Ortega explained. They're not I don't think they're not proposing to put the fence in the right-of-way currently, are they?
Not in the existing right-of-way, it's in that future right-of-way.
Oh, the future right-of-way.
Yeah.
If approved by Elkin County, you mean?
Yeah, and the future right-of-way is maybe that'll come to pass someday, maybe it won't, maybe it'll, who knows?
It might not happen.
And-
We shouldn't be making a
That's-
decision on the future right-of-way. I mean, we had a plan to build a boardwalk around Walled Lake. What are the chances that's going to happen? We shouldn't be taking away their front row based on a future right-of-way concept. We've got dozens of them.
Right, well, that's why I'm asking.
All my
that.
career.
That's why I'm asking that question, though, to
I
understand
want
the
to make
clarity of
them,
that.
accommodate them.
I know we've dealt with this before, is that the road commission has not actually acquired that property as right-of-way.
Right, it's a plan
So what
that
would happen
somebody
is if the
draft,
road commission decided to expand the road,
they're going to pay to move all of that.
they're going to
That's
have to
called-
condemn.
Yes.
They're going to have to condemn that property and pay them just compensation for that
We
property.
don't
which
have
would
to
in-
consider that
Which would
plan at
include the
all.
cost of relocating the
Exactly.
fence, and that would all be handled through the expansion of the right-of-way and the condemnation proceeding and the money that they would be entitled to receive
Yeah.
for that. So I don't, Legally, it's not an issue I'm wringing my hands over.
Okay.
This future right-of-way. I think the main thing they need is the site plan approval, obviously, and then the variance for the location.
Okay.
And usually, the way this is a little bit more of a easier issue to contend with is when a site is completely vacant. The proposed improvements, all proposed improvements at the time reflect the future right-of-way, and then those improvements are cited accordingly. So for example, if you were looking out at this site directly to the east, the Tudor Time site, their sidewalk is actually located further south, meaning they place that sidewalk 1 foot outside the future right-of-way line. So that's why if you visit the site, you can see that the sidewalk in front of La Fontaine, it's in one location, and then it jogs down. The reason for that is because at the time of the development of the Tudor Time, that was vacant, and there were no improvements enough that we could site them in for the future in the correct spot. I imagine what happened here is at the time that this was developed, Oakland County's vision of 120 feet wasn't there, and so that's why they put their improvements where they were located, because, they weren't thinking that that would actually come to, that wasn't part of their plan. Now it's part of Oakland County's plan, so now for vacant sites, it makes sense to do that. And also, it's a reflection of, once again, this is as a fence, it's not as substantial as, say, if we were citing a building. If we were going to put a building out there, we'd want to make sure to function it, place it accordingly to the future right-of-way line, because that would be something that's a lot harder to deal with in the future. But in this case, I do think that placing a fence at this time, as long as the property owner is aware that, at some point it might have to get scooted back, or it might never. It might not.
And the
But
reason why would be for expansion, right, to have 5 lanes or whatever. When the
Correct.
Pontiac Trail became a large artery, then that would be the reason
yeah.
why.
Yeah,
And that's more
exactly.
likely to happen than the boardwalk, but yeah, you're okay with that?
This is an existing business.
So-
And if we travel
Yep.
based on what some future plan
Got it.
exists, we're impacting on their business now. This is not a vacant land. It's a whole lot different discussion.
It's about clarity.
If you're building from scratch. We don't want to do anything, I don't want to do anything that impacts, I want their business to succeed.
Yep.
I support a fencing. With all due respect to the guy with all the reports, I don't need them. I read them regularly. They need security, especially nowadays. La Fontaine, but you probably know, we bought a whole lot of police cars from that facility. And we've also gotten a lot of reports and a lot of theft from that facility.
Yep.
I also serve as public safety director. I read most every report that comes through.
Oh, lucky you.
I don't think that has to be talked about too much more. The fencing, if you're willing to get approved, the size you want. So I believe we should accommodate them and not worry about what the road commission is going to do in the future.
Sure, it's about clarity though, Mr. Witt, that's all. That's all. I want you to have the fence, I think it's a great idea, and I certainly understand and appreciate it, but I want the clarity for everybody to understand what this verbiage means, and I guess for me especially, so.
We don't want to take away the
So I'll go
first
ahead.
row. Yeah.
No, of course not. But I also want to make sure that they understand if they do decide to expand to 5 lanes, that, this is part of the deal, so that's all.
If road commission comes in, they're going to pay big bucks to
Yep.
La Fontaine to take that property, so
go ahead and put a-
we'll see. And they'll probably be happy about that. I don't-
That won't come back to hurt Walled Lake, is that
Put a
correct?
motion on it.
Let's
put a
let's see.
motion
I hope we're all around when the road
I'll go ahead,
commission takes it.
yeah, I'll go ahead and put a
One more
motion for
question, one more
PC.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That, because of that, it wouldn't be able to come back to Walled Lake for some cost in the future if the county decides to start doing all that?
If the county takes the property, we don't have a say. They're going to, if they condemn it, they go
I
into
mean,
court.
would we be
They're going to
held-
pay the company a lot of money to get their property and all the other businesses along there.
Yeah.
The likelihood of that happening in my lifetime is pretty remote.
Well, nothing would come back on the city, that they have to be
No,
responsible. That's all I want to make sure.
Yeah.
That's all, okay.
Okay,
Good. Yeah.
good, let's go ahead for PC case 302, 1172 North Pontiac Trail Site Plan, applicant Lag Development. Go ahead and approve the plan submitted to planning contingent upon the 3 recommendations that McKenna has recommended.
and getting the ZBA approval.
And getting ZBA approval for the fence.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, whoever, anybody.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Osnick,
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Wolfson,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
O'Rourke.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. Okay.
Done and done.
Okay, new business, another item number 2, site ordinances about
We got the shed.
shed ordinances. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, so what I'm proposing this evening is an update to our shed ordinances specifically for lots having water frontage. And just a little background on this proposal and why I think it's important is dating back as far as the 1940s. People have bought homes on Walled Lake and have intentionally driven on the roads and put houses on our lake because they want to see a continuous unobstructed view. And I think that's something that we notice specifically when you go down 14 Mile. When you cross over from Novi, if you're headed north, into Walled Lake, you see the beautiful lake. It's wonderful to drive. We have walking trail along that as well that people enjoy. And it gives an unobstructed view year-round. The city has approved recently for structures to be built on the properties between the roads and the water. And these structures have and also have the potential to inhibit the contiguous view of the lake. So approval of these suggestions will ensure limited property owners can have a structure while maintaining the citizens' ability to enjoy the beauty of the lake that they've paid for and that they've enjoyed for all these years. So what my proposal would be is specific to lot sizes and structures allowed. So lake frontages of 75 feet or more are allowed a single 8x10 structure with an overall roof height up to 11 feet from the top of the roof ridge material to the average property grade, and the structure couldn't exceed 20% of the total lot size. If there's lots 60 feet to 74, they'd be allowed a single 8x10 structure with similar guidance, an overall roof height up to 11 feet from the top of the roof ridge to the average property grade. If a lot is 59 feet or less, they're not allowed to have structures other than what the current ordinances already allow, which would be new fences and I believe structures up to 4 feet high, however that is listed. And also, we do have a number of lots at the end of streets that are multi-use lots. There's multi-owned lots, associations, neighborhood common lots, multi-use lots, apartments, duplex, condos. All of these would not be allowed structures, and I'm concerned with that part of it too, because we do have streets in the city of Walled Lake where there's parks at the end or there's common areas, and I've heard talk of people putting up locker type of structures that run the length of the property, and it allows people to have individual storage areas, almost like garages. Landscaping to conform to current ordinances, no plants over 4 feet or contiguous wall of arborvitae's over 4 feet tall that in essence would be representative of a fence, would block that view as you're driving down the street, your view to see the lake. Setback suggestions would be 10 feet from the water, the shoreline, just to ensure that there isn't erosion towards the lake from a structure being there or from a footing or a base. 3 feet from the side lots to ensure there's proper distance between the fence and the neighbors, and then road edge boundaries to not encroach easements. Now, one of my neighbors had a suggestion where they said, well, maybe what we could do, this is fine, is have Mid-Michigan Barns approve 2 structures for lakefront owners, and anybody who wants to put a lakefront structure on could use one of those 2 suggestions. That one I think is a good idea. That one's not really what I'm here about today. It's really to ensure that we preserve the beautiful view of the lake as you're driving on the roads surrounding the lake or walking the trails. Any questions or comments?
No, I think it's a good idea.
About the only thing I can see is that this would all, and any of this could be something that we could discuss at the council meeting, you know?
Well, if, without getting deep into these proposals, it would probably recommend the city attorney draft up some proposed ordinance that amended what needed to be amended, and submit it to council. Ultimately, you're
Have
talking
that
about have
submitted to
council
council.
do that. Administration will enforce whatever the ordinance is. But any changes you got here, whether there's debate on it or not, would have to go to council. I don't see this is a good place for it to start. So I don't know, you need to have all night discussing this. If we can, the city attorney may find out the reasons why some of this is not a good idea, because it's going to compare to other sections of the code. So your motion is going to be something like, move to have the city attorney draft a proposal forward to council to see if these amendments work, some version of that. And
make
he
that
probably
motion.
can help us even tonight on how to go about that.
Well, and there is a...
That sounds good. I'll make that motion.
Okay, and there's a little bit of an urgency, just because as we near spring, people are now looking, we've got a lot of new property owners on East Lake Drive, and a lot of people are talking about putting up structures and sheds and all that. So I think there's an urgency to try to have these put into place before the newer structures are going to be put in.
If you get a second to his motion, you're going to get this moved ahead quicker than you might have thought. The question is,
I just
how does
made
that,
a- I
how
just
does that
made a
end
motion.
up when it gets to council? So
I made a motion to have it go to council.
Okay.
Or
Do I hear a
Thank you.
second?
Authority.
Thank you very much.
Draft it and send it.
Yeah, I don't know that we're to the point of actually drafting something to bring before council. There may be some further direction that may be needed as far as the substantive changes that are being proposed here. I mean, this is a pretty good start. I mean, it's kind of like a term sheet, more or less, that you would use. I think there needs to be, I think it needs to be presented to council, and there needs to be some feedback and some maybe better direction in terms of the content of the ordinance itself. I'll look at it. I mean, it's the first time I'm looking at it is tonight, and I'll have to think about it to see if, there's enough here to work with as far as preparing a draft of an ordinance amendment to bring before council. And, maybe there is.
Would you?
It would be, maybe that would be at least a starting point for a discussion, and then you could work off that from there or something.
what I had in
want
mind
me
is
to
put together an ordinance, and if it takes 3 months to get it right or whatever, this is not something they're going to pass like overnight, because there's going to be conflicts here with what you want. So a lot of people think that they have the right to build whatever they want, so you're going to have pushback no matter what. We've been through this
Well,
before. So-
Technically, you can build a shed under 100 square feet without any kind of permit whatsoever.
No, you still need a zoning permit.
If
You don't
we
need a
get
building
this-
permit
if we
under
get to the
200
city
square foot, you need a
council,
zoning.
need a-
That's when the
building permit.
discussion happens, and then all the conflict, but you put together a draft ordinance as inadequate as it may be when it gets to council for discussion, then that's when the discussion really happens, because it's got to be done by ordinance. You can't implement some of this stuff without an
Right.
ordinance.
Well, and that was the
Right.
intent, was to have it to go to city council eventually, and I do have the Novi ones, if you want me to send those to you. I talked to Christian over there, and he sent their whole,
Yeah. If this was based on like, say, did you base this on the no-buy ordinance?
similar, yeah, I used some of the stuff they looked at.
Well, yeah, that would be
adjusted
helpful,
ours.
then. That would be helpful. That would be helpful.
Well, we need a motion or anything, or just,
I think we had.
Already made a motion.
Second.
okay.
And then Bob
Second?
seconded
We
it.
didn't vote on it, but yeah.
Well, we didn't vote on it yet. We're just in discussion right now.
Yeah, okay. So you seconded, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Any other discussion?
I'm not going to have anything for next week's meeting, obviously. I mean, but maybe the following
Can you
month.
get that done by Friday?
That's right.
Well, it actually would be due by the end of the day tomorrow.
There you go.
But,
I'm sorry, I guess it's...
What, can't get it done?
but, yeah, well, I think by the March council meeting, I'll have a chance to look at this a little bit more closely and maybe at least put something together that'll give a starting point to start the discussion.
Yeah,
that
they
could-
shouldn't interpret anything I say to say that we support this 100%, or administration and/or council members, but that's how the discussion like this happens. There's certainly pushback on both sides. I'm telling you right now, that our consulting planner over there, he's cringing, because like, what does all this do, you know? I mean, whoa, because I don't know either, so don't expect that this gets done rapidly, but the discussion could start rapidly, and that's what you've done tonight.
Well,
which is great.
and the challenge comes when people do start putting up structures and
Oh, yeah.
such, because we really don't have any guidelines around that. So
Well, there's people who
we've
think we
had-
shouldn't have any guidelines at all, like Bob
Some of
said.
these structures are already up anyways.
Right.
yeah.
I think
the real
you've done what you needed to do, and that's forward it and get it
Great.
going. So
Perfect.
that-
Thank
that
you.
Yeah, I
works
think
out
either
really good.
John or myself can report to the council this month that this is an issue that came up at Planning Commission. And
Right.
and that we'll be, we're looking to bring something forward for council's consideration at future meetings.
Give them a
Appreciate
heads
that.
up, basically.
Right, right.
So we don't need to vote on this, or just,
You made a motion, you might as well vote on it.
okay.
Take a roll call. Let's see. Witt,
Yes.
Wolfson,
Yes,
Robertson,
Yes.
Osnick,
Yes.
Rourke.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
appreciate that, the considerations.
okay. Take care of our new business. Any commissioner comments? Well, good meeting, I think. All right. Anybody make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Aye.
opposed? Aye. Good,
Thank you.
Thank you.
we're done.